All the hot guys worked at Lovesac. I don't know if that's universal, but in Framingham, Mass, all the hot guys worked at either Lovesac or Orange Julius, and conveniently they were right next to each other.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn David Nelson. Eat your vegetables, but not the garbage. Our Shawnism for today, I get into it with Katie Nolan, this amazing sports commentator. I know you've seen her and love her. She makes you laugh. She has a lot to say about a lot in a male-dominated world. She's funny. She's witty. We get into how to navigate our lives online and pull out the feedback we need from the comments and whatnot while sifting through and hopefully ignoring some of the garbage that's thrown at us. We talk about how not to live in delusion, how to have the door open to feedback and be able to take it in, parsing out the good stuff, the vegetables, right? From the trash that will otherwise drag us down, make us depressed, bum us out. You've got to figure out what it is you're chasing, because that can keep you focused on the road and not all of the distractions on the sides that can take us down. The power of choosing to deal with it, taking things head on, operating with integrity. You only have one life. Don't cater it to someone else's opinions. Find your opinion on the things that matter. Voice it to those who you dare to voice it to. Be brave. And the idea of making gratitude your armor, having this base where you know who you are, you know what you have, you know what you're worth, and you're not going to let the world take you down a peg just because it's fun to make snarky comments online. You can live in that world without being taken down by it. Explored in great detail with a woman who is wading through it on a daily basis. I don't know about you, but I find myself bummed out and introspective on all kinds of things people say to me, whether in comments or in real life. And we have to develop the ability to utilize that feedback loop to the good. I think you're going to love this conversation with the one and only Katie Nolan. Our guest today is a multi-platform powerhouse, sharp-witted, Emmy-winning, and totally unfiltered. She's gone from bartending in Boston to dominating the world of sports media with stops at Fox Sports, ESPN, and her own headline-making podcasting ventures along the way. Whether she's breaking down NFL drama or breaking the fourth wall on Celebrity Jeopardy, she brings insight, humor, and just the right amount of sass. She's also here to talk about something deeper, the importance of feeding your mind the good stuff, not the garbage. In an internet world filled with trolls and toxicity, she reminds us that the only feedback worth listening to comes from people that you respect, and everything else is just a bunch of noise. Please welcome the brilliant, bold, and always entertaining Katie Nolan.
Oh my God, that's my favorite intro of all time. It was so nice. It was so complete. Wow.
I'm for hire.
This is a lot to live up to here.
Well, not scared. All right. So when you first heard our topic, eat the vegetables, but not the garbage, what first came to mind without thinking too hard?
Man, I eat a lot of garbage. That's the first thing I thought of. This is a topic that I'm fascinated by because I came up through the internet. And so I have always existed, my work has always existed with a comment section. And so it's been a push and pull relationship. It's been something I've tried to manage. It's been something I've had, it's come up a lot in therapy. It's just it's something that I think is often overlooked. People just say like, don't read the comments, as if that just makes it easier to do. And I love having this conversation about like times I've spent too much time in it and times that I haven't. But basically what I've found is that you're absolutely right. Take what's useful. Don't shelter yourself from feedback completely. But also don't spend too much time ruminating in the bad stuff.
Okay. So easy to say, right? But how do you do it? Like, how do you exist in a world where, especially, you get controversial, you're on big stages with lots of listeners, real and probably bots. How do you actually manage that? What are some of the practical tips and tricks you can give a listener to think about how to manage themselves in the comment sections that can really wreak havoc with our own minds, egos, confidence, self-rumination, all that?
I think my number one tip and trick, that I'm laughing because I know that I'm not currently following it, and I hope you don't check, but remove it from your phone. I think, you can still get to these apps and sites like Instagram or Twitter. You can still get to them from a browser. You can still access them. But to not need to have the app on your phone, it's just, how many times in your life have you picked up your phone and you just absentmindedly, like, it's muscle
Totally.
memory at this point. It's like
Totally.
you finish doing a task and you pick up your phone and then you're like, I'm clicking on all the little icons I usually click on. So removing them from my phone keeps me from mindlessly going to them, because
Wow.
I find if I'm mindlessly scrolling through it, I'm not, being mindless means I'm really not paying attention to what's getting in and what's not. And so it's like, it'll be an hour later, I'll be, washing a dish, and I'll hear this like negative thought that I don't even realize came from when I was like scrolling through my phone. So, number one tip trick is one I'm not currently following, but remove it from your phone.
But you do utilize the sites and you do navigate your way through comments in order to stay in the conversation. But it sounds like you try to be intentional about it and try and do it through a PC to make it just a little bit more intentional, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's like I want to be awake when I'm doing it. I want to be mindful of the fact that I'm doing it. Um, I'm probably not the best advice giver because like I said, never existed without the comment section. I started on YouTube. I had a blog and I made YouTube videos. And so, when you're not doing numbers, you can keep up with all of your YouTube comments. There's like 8 of them. So you can read them all. You can know what people think. I used that sort of feedback. I actually was big on like Facebook, not anymore, but back then when I started like 15 years ago. And I would use the feedback of like, okay, they like when it's more this and it's less like this. I sort of used it as, I get more feedback from real people that watch my stuff than I do from the people who pay me to
Like
make
your
it. They
producers. Yeah.
they don't give a lot of feedback from the top down. So like I use that to sort of hone my skill, and sort of I assume the way that like old school producers would use like viewership numbers and watching where viewership goes during a broadcast. They use that to like form their content. I used feedback from like listeners, viewers, whatever it was that I was making to help me make it better, because I didn't go to school for this.
Yeah.
I just like doing this and find it
Mhm.
really enriching. But then you learn very quickly as a woman, especially. It's not
Hmm.
just to women, but as a woman, especially, you learn that like a lot of these comments are not going to be things that will help me become a better person at my job. A lot of them are about other things that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. And so, at first those hurt. And then it just takes I really do think it was like exposure therapy, a couple of those. And then now, like any comment on my looks, it doesn't affect me because I'm just like, I've heard it all. They have nitpicked every single thing about my face. So I no longer, it doesn't matter because I've heard it all, you know? But like the content is the stuff that matters to me. Someone could be like, this girl is dumb. And I'd be like, oh, am I?
Oh,
Am I dumb? And then you have to go, who is this person? This person may be going through something. Maybe this person just got called dumb by someone they love and they're upset and they're not conscious of that and they're online and they're just yelling it at everybody. And
yeah.
here I am taking it personally. You just have to remember it's either a person who's going through something that they may not even understand and you should have pity for them, or it's a bot and you don't have to internalize anything a bot is saying because it's just saying stuff people have said
Yeah.
before.
Well, and if it is a bot, or by the way, even a human being uh, comporting themselves in a bot like way, their goal is to get a reaction, whether from you or from anybody else. In
Mm.
fact, what's wild to me is how many things I can now see as just purely controversy for controversy's sake, because that is what moves the needle in the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a really wise little epithet, right? Eat your vegetables, but not the garbage. And I think the way you describe it, when you go to get your consumer feedback, which for you has been through the comment section, which I think is brilliant, right? I mean, it's sure you could just like Joe Rogan style, not look, not read, not, and not pay attention to it. That's one way. But as a uh, consumer brand manager myself, I'm a huge believer in hearing what, let's say, quote unquote, customers have to say. But if you're going to go dumpster diving, then you really need to pick through to find the vegetables and just tune out the trash. And that sounds to me, it sounds to me, the way you described it, like that's a skill that you've developed over time, through exposure therapy, so to speak, through trying to be mindful about how you do it, when you do it, and not just being flippant or sloppy about it.
Yeah, if there's like I it's almost embarrassing how methodical I am about
Hmm.
it and
Give me some
how
other
much.
examples. Like what? Like what's
So,
methodical about the way you
like,
do it?
if there's something that is eating at me, like if because sometimes you'll read a comment and you'll think, because you have the what you say to yourself, which is like, that doesn't bother me, that doesn't affect me at all. I know that isn't true.
Right.
But then, 2 hours later, you're doing something, it keeps coming up in your brain and it keeps kind of being something your brain is mulling over. I'll write it down and then write down my thoughts on it. I'll write, like, what is it about this that's bothering me? Because then I can get to the bottom of either, is it bothering me because it's a thing that is like antithetical to me as a person, right? So if it's like, this is misinformation, if somebody accuses me of misinforming them, or if somebody accuses me of being stupid, those are like big triggers for me because it's so I've tried to build something that is not viewed that way. I try to be intellectually rigorous. I try to, make fact check, make sure everything I say is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to, if I'm writing, I'll journal about a comment that bothers me, to try to get to the
Wow.
bottom of whether it's triggering me because it's something I know I don't want to be, or if it's triggering me because it's something I am doing and need to work on. Because that's what I need to get to the bottom of. Are they calling what I'm saying stupid because it's upsetting them, because they don't want it to be true? Or are they calling it stupid because actually I made a mistake and it
Wow.
wasn't as smart as it could have been? Because that is valuable feedback to me. If I need to learn a tough lesson, I know
Mm-hmm.
I have defense mechanisms in my brain that are going to make me say, like, no, you're the smartest and the best. There's no chance that would be about you. But I think giving into that instinct is how you get completely out of touch. If everybody online is wrong, I don't know how you would know. You'd have to have some delusional self-belief that every single person who watches what you make is taking away from it something other than what you intended. And I can't live in that space. I'm too, like, I need to touch the ground. When like the room's spinning when you're hungover and you put your foot on the ground and you're like, okay, this is where the ground is. So I feel like I can't dismiss all of it. So when it bugs me, I try to get to the heart of, I forget about the person entirely who wrote it,
Yeah.
bot, person, whoever. It's not about
And
them.
and you're not replying either, it sounds like. You're
No, I
going to
used to. Ooh, I used to, and we could talk about how I used to. Which is funny now. It's funny now because now the algorithm rewards interaction like that.
Yeah.
Now your posts will get boosted if there's a lot of interaction. And I'm like, back in the day, I was replying to everybody and it wasn't boosting me anything. I was just doing that for free. And now I'm trying not to reply. And in turn, it's not boosting the. So it's a whole big thing. But I try not to reply. And I've learned that it's not about them, it's about me. And what is it that's bothering me specifically about this? And is it something I can actively work to fix? And then if it is, then that's my goal for that week, is like, make sure I'm doing, whatever it is more, or I say
Yeah.
less, or make sure I'm saying
Mm.
like less, or whatever it is.
I know I got called out for that the other days. I feel like when I read that, it almost felt like a bot to me. It's almost like an easy dig.
Yeah.
It could have been a real, I don't know. I was called out for,
Like, yeah, we all do it though. It's the thing. We all do it. It's just a natural speech pattern that
well,
we all
especially if
have
you're trying
adopted.
to keep it casual and not, come off too heady. And so here's what I love about your explanation of what you do is that it's very easy for someone from the outside to look at a Katie Nolan and be like, man, she's so funny and witty and talented and like just the stuff just rolls off her tongue and she's doing all these things on all these different platforms. But it is a craft, and behind the scenes, like who do you know that's journaling their ruminations on a comment that affected them psychologically? I don't know anyone that's doing that. Like, and
Because it's
maybe I'm
embarrassing. If you
no,
do, they haven't told you because it's
I'm
embarrassing.
grateful to you for sharing, because like what it reveals to me is that you're a pro. That's what it says to me. Like, you take what you do seriously. You're not just this gifted person. I'm sure you have plenty of gifts and raw talent, but you're not just this gifted person that's able to both be witty and whatever and deal with the garbage through, for the vegetables. You have tactics that you've developed over time. You're exerting the effort. You're trying to continue to hone your craft. You're trying to continue to wrangle your psychology. Because if you're not in that place, it can be very hard to be present enough to be funny, to be witty, to be sharp, to be quick. For me, one of the places that I learned this a little bit was, so I'm a hack musician. I'm a musician. I play the piano. I was a lead singer in a band forever, like a bar band, right? And but first a jazz trio. But the point is, when you're playing live music, it's actually this really cool, I don't know, pressure situation, because it's happening in time. In
Mm,
fact, it's measured in time. And even
right.
like a non-musician knows when you're off or out of time or out of tune. And so it's kind of this cool place to live, because you have to be super present. And if you're distracted by like the way someone's looking at you weird in the crowd, or someone who knows, like maybe talking loudly, not even paying attention, any of these things that can mess with your ego, you cannot be present enough to be really good, especially if you're playing live music in the way like with jazz, where it's like you're making it up on the spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just muscle memory only. And I think it's the same in this medium. You have to, and so my point is, a human who's going to get good at this. And when I say this, it could be anything. You could be an influencer, you could be generating content, you could be a commentator, a host, podcaster. But you have to develop the ability to wrangle, I don't know how else to say it, to wrangle your psychology and get yourself in a zone where you can perform. And I think people can take that for granted. They can look at someone like you who's very talented and just think, well, she's talented and I'm not, or she's more talented than me, which may be true, but it's not only that.
Yeah. For me it's like especially now you mentioned before that like the more reactive something is, the more on the polls and like out of this world it is, the better it does in the algorithm.
Yeah,
And I'm so just opposed to that. I feel like what has become my number one priority now is to know me. Is to make sure before I go out here and do anything that I fully know and understand me, so that there's no time where I'm feeling the pull to be something else because it will do better numbers or because it will get more attention. It's very important to me that you can turn up the humor of something or the drama of something, but that I don't misrepresent what I feel, believe, and know to be true. So I basically use the internet to help me find my blind spots and weaknesses, and rather than try to mask them, I try to understand them better so that I can actually use them when I need to and also avoid them when they're a detriment to me.
that's interesting. And extremely self-aware. Look, I'm like a broken record on this podcast, I'm sure, but I believe that all success is rooted in self-awareness. It's like the fundamental principle at the base of everything. And what you're describing to me is, as I hear it, is becoming aware of how you feel about a topic through a concerted effort to kind of explore that. And what I find so interesting about that is I think a lot of humans, including me, tailor our points of view maybe for what's popular, sometimes not for what's popular, for what might be controversial or what might be edgy. Where in reality, if we would just be honest, like really honest about how we feel about something, it probably will cut through because there's so much dishonesty everywhere. And
Mhm.
that's the harder part, is not to pick the edgy thing, whatever you think that is, but to actually be willing to be vulnerable enough to speak your mind about how you really feel about something. And it'll probably end up being controversial in some way anyway, even though it might not feel controversial to you because it's just how you feel. And that's the
Mhm.
harder part. I find it very difficult. And look, you and I are in different seats, like to some degree, and I envy the seat you're in because I think, and tell me, maybe I'm wrong here, but to some degree, you are expected to generate a point of view and to generate some amount of controversy. And maybe that's the wrong word, just generate some amount of, like, I don't know, interesting conversation where no one's expecting me to do anything but sell good couches. And so for me to even have an opinion can be very
Oh, I see what
risky.
you're saying. Yeah, it
Can be
can be
very risky
difficult.
because
It
it
can
could
be
put
risky.
my
Yeah.
whole organization, I represent technically a couple thousand people, like they may not agree with my take on something. And so I
Yeah.
really envy someone like you who has the chance to speak their mind and even has a platform to do it. But it
And
still takes
sometimes
a
sometimes I envy a person like you who doesn't have to who the news can just happen and you can go, "Well, that's how that is." And you
that's
don't have to
interesting.
go, "I gotta go make sense of this. I have to
Mm,
figure out how I feel." Because sometimes, look, the world is confusing. There's a lot going on right now,
mhm,
and I feel like, especially with the way, because those a lot of those apps I use to read comments are also the apps, at least I used to use, to sort of stay in touch with what's going on. I would get, everyone's talking about one thing and I would go, well, this must be the big thing we're all talking about today.
mhm.
Now, in the years since those apps have been around, that's been sort of changed, whereas now, like we've been saying, algorithmically, if I click on something, I'll keep seeing that something. So something could feel like a huge story to me, and the guy next to me has never even interacted with it because he's not clicking that type of content. So I'm also trying to be very aware of the potential for myself to be influenced by invisible factors that I don't realize. That, like, I'm only being served content on this side of the issue. Um,
Well, and
I
worse, now you're being served apparently comments,
Yes,
on this side of the issue,
yeah,
which I think is messed up. Like I
it's a
really
mess.
hate that part
It's
of
a mess.
the
It feels too siloed. Like, there are people who are so worked up about one issue that, like, might know somebody, like the majority of people don't even know about. It's too you can just keep digging yourself into this hole that
yeah.
you feel like you're learning more and you feel like you're making a difference by yelling about this thing that then, if you were to ever pull your head up and get some air, you'd notice that, like, nobody else is kind of, this doesn't matter as much as somebody has monetized it mattering to you. um so it's, the internet's just become even more murky.
Well, so as a person who chooses to and is expected to form a point of view on stuff, and there's a lot of people in their own way generating content, like even this podcast. There are two questions for you then to that realm. One, how do you manage the risk of maybe uh, having a point of view, sharing a point of view, voicing a point of view that may be wildly unpopular or may even turn out to be wildly unpopular? Who knew? And when I say unpopular, I don't just mean unpopular. I mean, may even get you in some kind of trouble. Like anyone, we all have bosses one way or another, even if our boss is just the court of public opinion.
Mm.
So how do you manage that risk, or do you not manage it and you throw caution to the wind? And then number two, how do you expose yourself to all kinds of points of views? Like what tactics do you use so that you don't accidentally algorithm your way into an echo chamber that's not ideal for someone who probably wants to be well informed? So first, how do you manage the risk?
I think, for me personally, and this may be too personal to be universally, like, applicable, so this may not be good advice or anything, but I I started my career on YouTube. I kind of worked my way up. Then I got a job at Fox Sports. And then after that, I went to ESPN. And then the pandemic happened. And then I tried a season of MLB. And then I took these like 2 years of like, stop. I worked really hard to get somewhere. I got somewhere. It's not necessarily going, it doesn't seem like it's going up anymore. So let me just stop and figure out what I want to do. And I think when I did that, and I've been very lucky, I was paid a lot, so I've got money that I've saved. I don't spend except on delivery food. I took the time that I'm grateful I was able to afford to take at a time like this, and I sort of just tried to figure out what it is I'm chasing, what it is I want, and in that time, I sort of, I reconnected with sports because working in sports, I don't know if you have anything like this in your life, but when it becomes your job, it like loses a little bit of its specialness and its sparkle to you.
Mhm.
And so my relationship with sports had changed by working in it for so long. And then I took these 2 years to sort of just watch sports like a person who enjoyed them. And what I came away from all of that with was like, if this all goes away tomorrow, that's okay. I have what I need. I'm so lucky. I live in an amazing apartment in the greatest city in the world. The funniest man on earth has asked me to marry him. I have the cutest dog you've ever seen. I'm a Boston sports fan, which has its up and downs, but a lot of ups. Like I really don't have a lot to complain about. I have the way that my life is right now. I love it, and so I use that as sort of my armor when I'm going to say something I believe in. So, like I said before, I make sure it's what I believe. I make sure this isn't just me parroting somebody else's talking points. I make sure that I'm informed. I check my opinion for the harm it can do. That's something that I don't think is required of me, but that is very important to me. I try to make sure that any opinion I share is not going to actively harm some community or bring
Mm.
any sort of danger to anybody. And then I just say it because if 90% of people hate what I have to say and they go away, that's okay. I was still me.
Yeah.
At least I didn't go out there and pretend to be something I'm not. And everybody said, boo, we hate you. Because then I'd be like, well, wait, that wasn't me. I can be me. Come back. I'm just being me. And if 90% of people hate me, then okay, I'll bartend. I don't know. I'll find something else to do. I will always find a way to make money. Um, and I just believe that this wouldn't have happened this way, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't meant to be exactly me. So that's how I don't worry about, I worry. I stress. If I'm going to say something that I know is probably controversial, I stress, especially if it's about some hot button topic that
Sure.
has a huge, like, online screaming public that loves to find the next thing. But I don't worry in like an existential way. I don't worry in
Yeah.
like what's gonna happen. I'll deal with it. If somebody needs to have a meeting with me because of something I said, I'll deal with it. It's happened before at a big company where
Yeah.
they didn't like something I said and they
Mm.
talked to me about it
Mm.
and they asked me to apologize. And I said I would apologize for this one part, but not this part. And
Good.
they were like, that's not even the part we want you to apologize for. And I said, well, then there goes the apology. And it just is what it is because like you only have one life and I don't want to spend it parroting somebody else's opinions. Now, the second part of your question, which is how do you make sure you don't get caught up in an algorithm of bad ideas and misinformation, is I talk to people in real life. I like I said, that fiance that I mentioned, he's a stand-up comedian, and so he travels around a lot. And he's every now and then, it's on the weekends, so every now and then I'll go with him, and I'll just
So
sit in his
cool.
green room and talk with the comics that open for him or the people that come in to see him. And like, I wouldn't say I'm bringing up controversial topics to be like, let's get to the bottom of this, but I love to yap. So I'll just sit with somebody and sort of get their feelings on a topic that I've been thinking about
That's
and
cool.
just sort of try to gently tell them how because I think that the art of conversation is what we're missing right now. It's like we're missing the ability to go, you feel this way and I feel this way, but surely we both could feel like this, or we could feel a little closer like this. You don't have to be on my side, but we are so like this that it's hard to get into the middle. And so I found it really rewarding to have conversations with people about topics that even I'm not afraid to go like, look, really know either, but don't you think this or this? And it just sort of helps me round out and like ground what I feel in reality. So I know I'm talking
Yeah.
to people who don't necessarily agree with what I think, but I can learn from them at least like how to speak to that person
Yeah.
when I'm talking about this issue. That person might be listening, and here's how I can reach them.
I think that is such brilliant advice. And it's amazing, right? How different real life interactions are than those we have online. And it's kind of sad because I think it's easy to mistake online for some proxy of the real world, but it is not. And the things that people will do and the things that people can get away with or without true anonymity, right? Even if they're not being, truly anonymous in their account, it's completely different in real life. And so I think it's very valuable to, what a blessing to like have this opportunity, the way you just described it, to not just interact with people, but to interact with very witty people on a I guess daily basis, we'll call it. So finding, and if you don't have that in your life as a content generator, that's an interesting thing to challenge yourself. Like, where are you getting those interpersonal interactions?
Mm.
I would have never expected that to be your answer, so I appreciate that.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Good.
that's cool.
Cool.
And by the way,
Cool.
if I can go back and I guess for my own edification and for listeners to summarize what you said about how you manage risk, about what you have to say, as opposed to just not having something to say, but you say things and you do it with your eyes open. What I heard is like, first of all, you put yourself in a position where you can disengage, whether it's journaling on the topic or in your case, coming to a full stop to reassess where you're at in life. Like, but you had to put yourself in that position. You had to save your money. You had to get yourself independent. That's a useful thing for us to contemplate. Two, you made gratitude your armor, right? Like you went back to the fundamentals. Like, I love what you just said about you've got this fiance, you've got the cutest dog in the world. You have, and so I have a thing that I read besides my mantra, which I've talked about on this podcast a little bit, these things that I say to myself every morning. It's grown and changed over time. I also have this little bit that reminds me that I have this, because I can get distracted. People want me to invest in this or that. I feel like such a loser. I should have 3 businesses. I should have already sold this business, moved on to another one by now. I should be a billionaire by now. Whatever it is. But I have to remind myself like what a blessing it is for me to have this job. Let's call it a job where I'm able to live where I live and do what I do and affect people and make the kind of money I make and raise my family and be totally engaged. Like, I got to remind myself of that, lest I screw it all up with my own ambition. So you've made gratitude your armor. Do you have any mechanism to remind yourself of any of that on the daily, or is it just sort of there in the background for you because you've established that?
I mean, if we would call a mechanism like grabbing my dog by her neck fat and screaming into it, "I love you so much."
Yeah.
It's basically it's just a constant remind. It's hard to do. It sounds so stupid. If you
Yeah.
told me as a kid that one of the hardest things is to remind yourself to be happy and to be content, with the pace of the world, you always kind of feel like you're supposed to be running. But then there's times where I'm just like, remember that where you've run to is actually really beautiful, and like spend some time here. You don't have to be running at the expense of this. Like, this is the beating heart of what you do. So like nurture this.
Well, and you said the key word, remember. It is one of the most common words in scripture if we chose to get spiritual about it. And it is one of the most, because I think it's one of the most difficult things to do. Like, and so I have my own mechanisms that I remind myself daily of some of these blessings, and also the way that I want to comport myself. And even that's hard. It's hard for me to remember to go through my little mantra, but I try. So, and I developed a habit. So you made gratitude your armor, and then you go back to work and you do your job with integrity. So I just finished a book that I had heard of my whole life and never read, Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. I don't know if you've ever read this book.
I have Is that the one I have? It's gigantic.
Atlas. You might have Atlas
I might have
Shrugged.
Atlas
That's her most
Shrugged.
famous one, which is
Yeah,
also
yeah, I do. I
I'm
see it.
doing Atlas Shrugged now. You have Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged?
I think it's the title is blocked. Hold on.
That's all right. All right, she's going to get it. I like it. I love that, your position in front of books. I'm a
Atlas
huge
Shrugged.
reader. Let's see what you got from your
I
bookshelf.
wanted to have the cooler one, but I have Atlas
What do you
Shrugged.
got?
It's
This is Atlas Shrugged.
gigantic.
So I'm actually in the middle of Atlas Shrugged
Gigantic.
right now.
You
Ayn
doing an
Rand.
ebook? Because that's a lot easier than this.
Yeah, I'm listening to it
smart.
for sure. But she is like a writer's writer. And anyway, a big theme in her world, including in Atlas Shrugged, is integrity. That's the only word I can use to describe how I perceive it. And it's like, if you're going to do the thing, like in your case, be a commentator. I don't know if that's the right word, but we'll just use that.
I've spent my whole life trying to figure out what the word is for what I do. Commentator is fine. It works.
Whatever. Pundit, commentator, whatever. Do it with integrity. Like if you're meant to comment, make a comment that you believe in. And I think that there's just so much value in operating with integrity. And even if you're not a commentator, like in whatever it is, like in my case, I say that Lovesac stuff is built to last a lifetime and designed to evolve. It's a couch you could have the rest of your life if you want to. The sacks we sold that you grew up with in Natick Mall and up near Boston, those things that were sold back in the day when you were like slumming it in the store, scoping on the hot guys in your neighborhood. Which
all the hot guys worked at Lovesac. I don't know if that's universal, but in Framingham, Mass, all the hot guys worked at either Lovesac or Orange Julius, and conveniently they were right next to each other.
Probably went back and forth between the two. Yeah. But like those products we sell are still around. Like the ones I sold in college are still. My point is, if I were to get called out on crappy quality, to me, I'd be violating my integrity in that realm. Now, you might not think of Lovesac in that way because we're trying to establish that brand and it's called Lovesac, which is a pretty disarming name. And, but that's really how we make things. And now from here on out, we're going to wrap our whole brand around that. But that's me operating. So that for me, the decisions are easy. Like when I'm faced with these ways that I could save $1, $2, $10 on a product, I'm all for making stuff more affordable, whatever, better. But at the same time, like there comes a point where I will not compromise. And it's so easy for me because like that's my integrity in my realm. And it has nothing to do with what you're doing, but it's the same.
No, it does. It's reflecting it perfectly to me that it's like, why would I make a decision? It just feels like a lot of people's number one thing is like profit and growth.
Yeah.
And mine is like personal growth. It's like if I had to name my first goal for what I'm doing, it's that I am getting more in touch with myself as a human, and the human experience is more important to me than I have the number one ranked something or other because I feel like when you reach a certain point of popularity, you sort of have to insulate because you can't let all of it in. Like Joe Rogan, you mentioned before as an example. I don't think he could read his comments. Like there's entire podcasts based on talking about his podcast. So it's just, there's too much to consume about your own brand. So you sort of shut the doors. And then I think too long with the doors shut, it changes the product. And so I feel like I have to always keep my door open. And that will probably put a cap on how high up I can go, financially or success wise based on like fame. But for me, I'll be the most successful. I'm already more successful than I ever thought I'd be. So I'm already playing with house money, in my opinion, as long as I don't lose who I am.
Back to gratitude. So gratitude on a daily basis, remembering and integrity in what you do, whatever it is you do. So for any listener, try and figure out what you do and how can you do that with integrity? Because for what it's worth, I'm here to tell you that if you're able to operate with integrity, the finances be damned, you're going to be a much happier and probably ironically more successful individual as a whole.
Yeah. You'll be able to enjoy the success at least too.
Yeah. I mean, and you and I both have 100 millionaire, billionaire friends who are wildly unhappy.
Yeah.
And so I just think like the tactics that you are articulating are universal and eternal and right. So, uh, what's your secret then? As someone who's operating with integrity and actually trying to form intelligent opinions on all this stuff and putting it out there, what's your secret to not taking yourself too seriously? And
Hmm.
being able to have this sense of humor. Is that just natural for you?
It's a coping mechanism that I've used my whole life, so it's sort of like it's always there, even, trust me, at times when it shouldn't be. There's many times where I've gone to humor and it hasn't been the right call in a room, and you have to deal with the consequences of that. But I think also having a very funny, like, my person, my like soul partner is also incredibly funny. So if there were ever a time that I were taking myself too seriously, I think he humbles me. Um, I think just it's I hate to say remembering again, but I just feel like remembering that I'm just I'm just a person. I'm just a body that has my own thoughts and my own experiences that inform my opinions, but that I'm not, the be all end all of anything. And I play a lot. I do a lot of playing. I play video games. I play with my dog. I like a lot of, and sports. I work in sports, so that's just one big game. We take it very seriously.
Seriously.
But my whole thing has always been like, it's funny that we take sports so like we cover sports so seriously, and this was before, I guess this used to kind of be my thought. Now things are all different, everything's serious, but we used to cover politics in a way that like anybody could say whatever they want, and you're like, the politics are the stuff that scare me. That's the thing where I'm like, I don't know what the right answer is, and boy, do
Yeah.
I hope somebody smarter than me is working on it. But with sports, it's like, this is just a game. This is just a game. It has serious things sometimes. Sometimes there's, labor issues, or there's like domestic
Gender
violence issue. Like,
issues
there's, yes,
now,
of course,
you
there's
know,
like a ton of big stuff. But I also just feel like, it's, at the end of the day, it's a game. And the point of the game is to help let all of us play it and learn about ourselves and how to work as a team, and how to, enjoy winning and cope with losing.
yeah, that's good. I mean, it comes back to remembering and reminding yourself it's just me. It's just a game, as they say. Good advice for anyone. And some people, they're not so lucky. Their role, their job, their profession is not a game. They're dealing with life and
Mm-hmm.
death. They're dealing with serious, tragic issues. Like, I can't imagine. I mean, that's the thing. For me, it's at the end of the day, it's just furniture. I love. We have a slogan we've used on and off. Imagine a billboard up there. Lovesack.com is not a dirty website. And then, of course, you get there and it's like beanbags and couches, a bunch of families on them. Like, how disappointing is that?
Well, I mean, I had a couple kisses on a love sack as well. I believe that's a universal experience for millennials. Is
That's
like,
so
you
rated
hooked up with a
G. Come
guy
on.
who had a love
You know,
sack.
you know what? If I tasked you to roast Lovesack, you could do a much better job than a couple kisses on a Lovesack.
Yeah, true. That's true. I could, and if you need me to, let me know. I could. I've got a doc I could start.
It's an open invite. I'm saying to you, if you were to find what's your entry point? What's your entry point to roast Lovesack? You've observed it from the time you were a teenager.
Oh boy.
You have, what's funny? I'll tell you a funny story while you're cooking that up. I have a friend who unofficially, like, in our world, we don't have like godfathers, but they made me the godfather of their daughter because, hey, Shawn, yep, she was conceived on a love sack. So we always had this joke, like, we need to have this like URL where you go if like your child was conceived on a love sack, and like, unbeknownst to them, on their birthday, they always get a gift from Love Sack.
That's great.
Like, why is Love Sack? It's like lovesack/godfather.com or something.
That's great. You should do. They did there was like an ESPN thing where a bunch of kids were named. It couldn't have been ESPN. They like did like a thing where they brought them back every 20 years, like celebrated that these babies were born and named that. But that's what you should send little love sacks to people who were made on love sacks. I remember I got a brochure or something. Maybe this was a push you made a couple years ago about replacing all the furniture in your home with a love sack. And I just thought that if I walked into a guy's house, like from the bar, and every piece of furniture in his house was Lovesac, I would be afraid for I would just
Right.
feel like he was a psychopath. And this is my bed Lovesac, and this is my
I think we
toilet
could go with that.
Lovesac.
Furniture of psychopaths. Perfect. I think, but it's good to know how you really
I
feel.
like a Lovesac. In fact, I love a
But there's
Lovesac.
such a thing as too much love sack.
I need to eat my dinner on like a chair and a table. I can't have a beanbag that I sit on.
We do make the best couches.
I know. I saw that. I got to look into. They call them boneless. The kids online are calling your couches boneless couches.
Mm.
That's what I heard.
All right. So what's a healthy piece of criticism you've learned to love? From the maybe you even have the haters that you have to thank for this little, piece of this vegetable that you've been forced to eat.
I think. I mean, like was a big one. I know we've covered it, but I did sit with that for a while, and it did help. A while ago, somebody told me that I was so excited to speak that I was like cutting off good moments to get so it was my turn.
Yeah.
I was like I was taking too much of the and I don't know if this is a bad example in this interview where all I've done is talk at length, but I did take that criticism and sort of hold it the next time I did an interview, and it helped me like allow silence to make sure this person's finished thinking their thought, and like listen to them and jot a note. So like I'll keep a notepad now with me when I do an interview so that I can jot down like, don't forget this. Because then if I don't jot it down, then I'll spend my whole time trying to remember it. Then I'm not listening. Then I'm disengaged.
Yeah.
So I think telling me to let others speak and stop being afraid of silence is something that when I first read it, I was like, shut up. That's not true. And then you kind of sit and go like, okay, that probably
as you cut them off.
True. Yeah.
I'm the worst. I'm the worst at that. And I'm constantly trying. And it's just, look, it's hard virtually. It's almost harder because you don't have the same exact cues you have if you're sitting, face to face with someone in real life, the same. But that's a great piece of tactical advice. It reminds me of, again, a music analogy. It's so funny. I found that when I finally figured out how to be a professional musician, when I say that, it's just a musician that people would pay money to do things, right? Was when I finally started being able to, it's tricky, hearing myself through the speakers as I'm performing. And so it's like instantaneous feedback, right? When it's so tricky. I try to teach my kids because they're all musicians. Like it's so hard to listen and to like sing and play the piano at the same time. But that's the challenge. And the average person can't see that happening. And probably doesn't even think about that. But like an Elton John, a Billy Joel, that's often why you see musicians close their eyes, is because it's not because they're feeling it only. It's because they're listening and they're hearing the ring of the instrument and their voice. And I think that's what I love so much about any form of live music. Sports do it too. Like in my case, I ride dirt bikes off-road. That's extremely fast, very present. But even conversation, to your point, like you're hanging around comedians, very capable communicators who are sharp and witty, and they're reading the audience, as you know. That's what's so cool about any live audience. And it's the same way on stage with a live band. Like that's what I loved about what I was doing with even a cover band, was I was able to like build or pull back or drop out and come back in a way that was live and present. And I wondered, you don't get that chance as much in broadcasting. What's your version of that? Is there any parallel, or
yeah,
not?
Cause it's true. And I've done like, especially after the pandemic with that like weird time where we all kind of went away and came back. Anytime I've seen like done a live event where I'm on stage, it feels different, where I'm like, oh, I'm like out of practice of this, where it's something I love. I love having a crowd, and making a crowd of people laugh is my Everything. That's every show I've ever done, I've fought to have a studio audience because I think it helps make the show better for the people at home if the people in the room are enjoying it. Like I think it helps feed the energy of, because otherwise it's just you and a camera.
Yeah.
And you can make the energy, you can fake it, especially if you've like done it long enough, you know how to sort of bring that. But the easiest for me is to put people in the room. And make them laugh and like use the reactions, because sometimes it's a reaction you don't want. Sometimes they'll go like to a joke that you're like, well, wait, we're not even at the punch, and now the punchline's not going to land because you're already pulling back. But that is the work of it. That is the like, if I can hear them do it, then somebody at home is probably doing that too. So I can fine tune whatever I'm about to say to make it land better because now I know where they're at. So I guess in broadcasting, it's harder. I think a live audience helps. It's small. So it's not like a big cavernous audience, but we used to just put chairs for my late night show for ESPN, was just like chairs in the room. It was like 12 people.
That's cool.
Because it just helps. It helps with like the energy. It helps with exactly what you're saying, like listening to myself say something and then like feeling what they're reacting. It's like I'm
in real
doing,
time,
yeah.
and then adjusting your delivery to that reaction. So I think it's a good principle for people to think about. What's the parallel? So I love that you brought in these chairs and you had this even a little live audience, right, to generate that kind of energy. Whatever it is that you are doing out there with integrity, right, trying to operate, what's your version of a live audience? What's your version of real-time feedback? And can you even create it like you described? Can you even mimic it to put yourself in a position where you're both listening and operating at the same time? I think that's a cool thing for people to contemplate. So let me shift gears for 1 second before I lose you. I got to know, like, have you ever turned one of these brutal comments, these vegetable comments, into pure comedic gold? Like, what's your favorite hater comeback story?
Oh, it's been so long. I'm sure there's one, but if I were to try to find it right now in my brain, I feel like I would fumble it, and then whoever's listening would be like, that wasn't even that good of a clap back. But I promise, back when I was still replying to people, there were a couple of big ones. I feel like there was one. I mean, look, a common thing that a woman, especially a woman in a male-dominated field,
Tell me about
hears
that.
is that they slept their way to the top.
Mm.
And that used to really bug me because I was like, ew, I wouldn't sleep with any of these guys. Have you seen them? It was just like I took it very personally, where I was like, what? And also just like, I'm not that sexual of a person. So I don't know. It used to really bother me. But somebody said something about like this girl gave a blowjob to get her job. And I think I quote tweeted it. And I said something along the lines of like, that you could do it. Like if it's that easy, you could also do
You
it.
could do it too.
There's nothing stopping
It's an
you
equal
except
opportunity world.
a lack of ambition. All that's stopping you is a lack of ambition. I think is a pretty good self-own to a guy like that who's telling you that trying to discount my ability to get the job. And it's like, well, if that were the case, if we accept your premise as true, what's stopping you? Just don't want it badly enough, I guess. Something like that, I'm sure. But if you go, through old tweets, there's surely something. I used to take a lot of pleasure in, as we would say, dunking on these trolls.
All right, so here we go. Rapid fire and we're out.
Okay.
Who's the funniest athlete you ever interviewed? And you remember anything they said?
I think funniest athlete, Martellus Bennett was really funny. I don't remember anything he said. I just remember he's got like absurdist humor energy.
I love that. If the trolls sent you a starter pack, what comments would be inside?
That I slept my way to the top.
Okay.
That my comedian husband writes everything I say.
Of course.
That I don't even watch sports or know about them at all, that I'm just pretending for a really long time. I'm just completely pretending to care about any of this. Those are the big ones, I think. That's the big three.
What's your guilty pleasure sport or athlete that surprises everyone?
My guilty pleasure sport. Right now I'm like super into there's a professional softball league the AUSL, and they are newish. This isn't like their first year, but I think this is their first year with like MLB investment. And what they're doing is like, do you know old baseball, how they used to barnstorm and you would like take the teams and you would travel to the cities as like a league? That's what they do. So they just have like 4 teams. So all of the talent is like highly concentrated on these 4 teams. It's like everybody on the team is really good. And then the teams and the league travel to a different city every weekend and have their games. So I think it's a cool way to do a young league, and the games are like incredibly competitive. So I'm super into that right now.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And last one, any big oops moment, needle off the record, totally effed up live on
tons.
broadcasts?
A ton of them.
What one comes to mind?
Oh, a total mess up live on air. I know there's good ones. I hate this because I'm going to get off of this call and 8 of them are going to come flooding into my brain. A total screw up live on the air. I mean, there was one time we didn't have chairs, but that wasn't my fault, but we had to make it work. It was actually one of my favorite moments of live TV.
Really?
Is like when something they like, we were doing a show called Crowd Goes Wild.
Yeah.
They moved the set around a lot. We had all these different games and stuff we'd play. And then, they'd count us in from break and you'd be at the desk again. But we weren't allowed to touch any of the chairs because it's like a union job is moving all the stuff and whatever. So we were just standing at the desk waiting for them to bring in chairs. And then they were like, 5, 4, 3, we're live. And the 5 of us are just like standing, like pretending to sit, but like hunched over the desk. And you just like, we, made it the show. It actually made it so funny. But that's not a good example of that. So I'll probably email you a bigger screw up.
No, I still love it. I can just imagine pretending to sit live on TV.
It's fun. It changes the atmosphere. Makes
all
it
right.
fun.
Well, I'd love to probe you for more good. So here's my challenge to you, Katie. We'll stay in touch. I expect a good love sack roast coming my way over the next 30 days.
Okay.
From you, or you can let your fiance write it for you.
Well, he writes it all anyway. So
you can follow Katie Nolan on Twitter at Katie, KATIE NOLAN, Instagram at Nati:.
See what I did?
See what she did there? And definitely check out her hilarious podcast, Casuals, which is every Tuesday and Thursday, new episodes. Thank you so much to the sarcastic sports scholar, the queen of quick wit, the beloved backer of all things Boston sports, Katie Nolan.
Thank you, Shawn.
And remember, internet trolls are like gas station sushi. Just because it's there does not mean you should consume it. Eat your vegetables, not the garbage. It just might save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Have a good one.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely